In Boulogne-sur-Mer, the main French fishing port, some companies are not happy just selling fish. They also produce a product, totally unknown to consumers, which are widely used in prepared dishes. This day, a shipment of cod from the Baltic arrives. On one side, the fillets are piling up. On the other, the waste, which will not be lost.
And what are you filleting here? Is it a small cod?
Luce Sergent works for a company specializing in the processing of fish waste.
So once the cod fillet has been removed, in this case it's a cod, we see that there's still a lot of flesh that can be extracted by pulping for use in processed foods, such as rillettes, for example. So it gives added value to what was previously regarded as waste only a few years ago. And today, it's become a highly valued resource.
Highly valued, and most importantly, not very expensive. These remains, which are processed into our prepared meals, are bought by Luce Sergent for less than 15 cents a kilo. Some of them are loaded into these refrigerated containers. Others go directly into these dump trucks and are transported to this plant, where nothing is lost. Firstly, the fish skins are recovered for use in the cosmetic industry. As to the heads and the flesh that remains attached to the bones, they are sent to be processed in this workshop. But when we arrived, all of the machines had been turned off, even though it's pretty clear that they had recently been in use. But just before our visit, the boss of the plant ordered the production line to be shut down.
Showing the workshop procedures doesn't bother him. He's just afraid that consumers would be shocked if they saw what the pulp looks like.
We still managed to film what the boss wanted to avoid being shown, with a hidden camera in another workshop. It's of this pulp machine in action, crushing the waste and extracting this shapeless mash and not very appetizing substance, which is called the pulp. Once washed, here is what the finished product looks like. This one was made from the remains of a fatty fish, trout. What can that pulp be used for example?
It's usually used in prepared meals, but also in a lot of pet foods.
In what?
For feeding dogs and cats.
The advantage of this product is, first and foremost, its price. The pulp sells for around €1.30 per kilo, 10 times cheaper than a fish fillet. So it's really in demand for food manufacturers, especially since they are not required to indicate on their products' labels that they contain pulp. A plant which makes prepared meals in Western France. This morning, fraud control teams make a surprise inspection.
Hello, Mr. Emmerich, head of the Social Protection Department. Hello, welcome.
Jean-Michel Emmerich came to inspect the stocks of this famous brand food processing company. And this cod and potato pie, he wants to check its composition.
So this is the list of ingredients. You have water, cod, 23%, made up exclusively of cod and salt. So the professional's job is to determine if there is indeed 23% of the pure product in this meal.
Pure product, in a manner of speaking. When a prepared meal is labeled, for example, made with cod, without adding the words fish fillet, it is usually made with pulp.
You cut off the edges, and you take sample pieces from the middle.
Jean-Michel Emmerich wants to check that the composition of the pulp block corresponds to what is indicated on the label.
So here we have a block of fish flesh, which has been compressed because it's a frozen product. So obviously it's easier to hide other fish species by mixing them in with the cod than it would be if they were presented as fillets.
After the horse meat scandal, fish is also in the sights of the fraud control department. The samples are sent for DNA analysis to the Marseille National Analysis Laboratory, led by Frédéric Saltron. Identifying fish is a long and complex process. According to a recent U.S. study, 1 out of 3 fish labels is misleading, and that's the case with our pulp sample.
It says there are several things in it. This shows there's a part of Pacific cod, and there are 3 parts of Alaskan pollock, as we see here on the Alaskan pollock comparison sample.
So roughly speaking, we have Pacific cod and Alaskan pollock.
Yes.
But Alaskan pollock hasn't been mentioned as an ingredient.
No.
So that's illegal.
It's an anomaly. We'll have to have the professional explain the possible origin of the Alaskan pollock in the pulp of this raw material. We shouldn't exclude the possibility of the accidental origin of the fish, or simply the fact that Alaskan pollock is cheaper than Pacific cod, which could be a case of fraud. And you also have another kind of possible fraud, which would be passing off a farmed fish as a wild one.
Pollock in place of cod. In pulp, species substitutions are much more frequent and pose a problem of traceability. Today, the entire fish industry may be affected by these health concerns. So much so that some health professionals are completely changing their viewpoints concerning fish. Jean-Loup Mouisset is an oncologist. Today he is hosting an awareness-raising workshop on the causes of cancer for these women, all of whom are affected by the disease.
Our goal is not to go after the guilty parties, but rather to take measures that will help prevent recurrence.
And among the many causes that may lead to cancer, fish has become one of his concerns.
Simple advice. Don't eat much big fish, like salmon or tuna, not more than once or twice a month. You should eat small fish, rich in omega-3s if possible. For someone who has breast cancer, I would recommend small fish.
Eating fish may affect my health, is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, before it was good because of its measurable constituents, rich in omega-3s in particular, and vitamin D. You weren't given a spoonful of cod liver oil during your childhood for nothing, because it was rich in vitamin D and was beneficial to your health. But suddenly, we find fish that is full of pesticides and mercury. And if it's fish from Finland, we know that there is a lot of radioactivity, still 20 years after Chernobyl. So it's fish that shouldn't be eaten. It's fish that's full of radioactivity, mercury, heavy metals, PCBs, dioxins, etc. It's just not the same anymore. So the message has to be different because, unfortunately, things have changed.
For 30 years, the French health authorities had encouraged unlimited fish consumption. This summer, they lowered their recommendations. No more than 2 servings of fish per week. One way to prevent or anticipate what could be our next food scandal.